Hello! I'm Elaine, and I'm a tour guide in the French Quarter. I do ghost tours. And I am not going to tell you the stories that I tell on my tour, because you gotta pay for those. But if you want to hear some interesting things that have happened to me while I'm leading random drunk people around the French Quarter, I got you.
So tonight was uncomfortable. I had two tours tonight, and the guests on both were great. I want to say that first and foremost. My guests were fabulous, no problems with them. The problem was the quarter. First, on the earlier tour, we went to the bar break, like usual, and when we were turning onto that street, there was a taxi cab that sort of like looked like it was going to cut us off, and then I was like waiting for it, and then it went, and it stopped, and then I went, and it was just a little bit one of those awkward moments. And I got my guests across the street, and we continued down, and I took us catty corner to the bar because I like that spot best. Except I get there and I realize that the exact same taxi cab is idling right there. And I'm like, it's fine. They're a taxi cab. They're here to pick someone up. They'll be gone in a minute. And I tell my little story. I send my guests off to get drinks. And then I'm just waiting. I've given the guests about 10 minutes to go get drinks, though, fun secret, when I say 10 minutes, it usually takes longer than that. But I'm just hanging out there. And then the taxi cab driver gets out, and I'm half expecting him to be like, dude, you, like, cut me off on the road or something like that. But no, instead he just wants to, like, talk to me for a while, and this man is blitzed out of his mind. Like, I do not know exactly what drugs this man was on, but he was on quite a few of them, which is a bit of a problem considering he was an active taxi driver. But like, he mentioned a couple times he was waiting for somebody, he was picking someone up, but he was there significantly longer than he should have been if he was waiting for someone. I'm like, baby, you're having a problem. But he told me all sorts of interesting things. First, he was just asking me about being a tour guide, and I'm sitting here being like, no, baby, you gotta be a lot more coherent than this to be a tour guide. But he also told me all about how the New Orleans police officers love him because all he does is he works and then he goes home and does drugs. And how New Orleans cops don't care about the drugs and all this sort of stuff. And going on and on and on about how the New Orleans cops don't mind that he does drugs. But he also took a moment to explain to me that curse words are only words that are spoken in hate. So you can say any word you want as long as you don't speak it in hate, and therefore it's not a curse word. He also said something about people only fearing Hitler because he spoke with hate, and I'm sitting here like, okay, and this is when I sidle further away. And to make it even worse, like, I was waiting for my guests, and I told them to meet me right where I was, so I couldn't go too far away because I didn't want them to come out of the bar and not be able to find me. But I could see like half of my guests were standing on the other side of the road, clearly just being like, I don't want to go stand near that weird guy. And I'm like, I understand. So I was thinking, like, should I go over there to them? But that's not all of them, so if some of them come out of the bar and can't find me, that will be a mess. So I'm just sort of standing there awkwardly until the time to get started. But the fun bit was when I look over and see that he's come out and he's sitting on the hood of his still running taxi with 3 out of the 4 doors wide open, and he's rolling a joint on the middle of the hood. Or actually it was a blunt, but whatever. He is, preparing his drugs. And it was just one of those, okay, yeah. And like, finally it's time for me to get going, and I see all of my guests, so I'm like waving the few that are hanging out on the other side of the road over, and they come over, they're doing that wary, like, should I be near this guy? I'm like, oh, he's harmless, he's just very high, which is a little bit concerning considering he's driving, but it's fine. Don't step in the dog poop and come this way. But so that was a fine tour. It was a bit distracting, but it was one moment. And then the second tour started. And before the second tour even started, when we were still signing guests in, a couple of cop cars rolled by with lights blaring, sirens going, and like really aggressively fast. And I was like, okay. And then, like, when I was getting started, like, another one went by, and I was getting to the place where I wanted to start the tour, and I was like, okay, guys, gather around, and 3 more cop cars went by, and I'm like, okay. And then the fire engine came by, and then a couple of ambulances, and then a couple more cop cars. And I'm trying to tell this story, but I'm having to stop like every line because there are more cop cars with their sirens going. And eventually I just pause because there's a line of what looks like at least a dozen cop cars coming down the street, sirens blasting, horns going, everything. And one of my guests is like, "Are we going that way?" And I'm like, "Yup, but maybe not, depending on what's going on." And someone else is like, "Is this normal?" And I'm like, "No, it's not." And after the tour was over, by the way, one of the other tour guides that was in the same area said that she had counted 27 cop cars that went by. I honestly think it might have been more than that. But the great thing is, it made for a fun start of the tour. And for the first half of the tour, I'm just trying to tell the stories and trying to keep my guests entertained. And they're all looking around like, what is happening? Because I will admit, I too was a bit nervous because that is way too many cop cars. But then, luckily, at the bar break, I was able to open my phone and see that we had gotten messages from the office, and people were messaging each other. Tour guides from other companies are messaging in the general community. Like, there was a lot of people messaging that what had happened was the police were clearing out a protest in Jackson Square. And even though, from what everyone says, there were only like 20 protesters there, it was like 100 and something cops. They cleared off the entirety of Decatur Street. They blocked tours into Jackson Square in police tape. I know 2 different tours that were stuck in there and had to sort of like, sneak out of the police tape to continue with their tours. It was a hot mess. But the good news is that I could then tell my guests, okay guys, no dangers, nothing to worry about. There was just a protest and the city slightly overreacted to this. But yeah, so it made life interesting.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, and be sure to check out my book, Drunks of the French Quarter Theater, available on Amazon, bookshop.org, Barnes & Noble, pretty much wherever.